Since he became Prime Minister, he and the Home Secretary dismissed calls for an inquiry because they did not want to cause a stir. They accused those of us demanding justice for the victims of this scandal as, and I quote, jumping on a far-right bandwagon. Yes. A claim the Prime Minister's official spokesman restated this weekend. Shameful. It has been left to Conservatives time and time again to force this issue. 3 times, Mr. Speaker. 3 times. They can mutter now. They all mutter now. 3 times, Mr. Speaker, these Labour MPs voted against the national inquiry. They voted against it 3 times. Liberal Democrats didn't bother to vote at all. Asleep at the wheel. Labour MPs voted against a reasoned amendment to the Children's Bill. At committee stage of that bill, they voted against. At committee stage of the crime and policing...
Mr. Swallow, I want you to set a good example. It's a very serious debate. Temps are running high, but I certainly don't want you to see you pointing and shouting and bawling in that way. Kemi B.
Mr. Speaker, they can point and shout as much as they like. They know the truth as we on the side of the House do. Yes. 3 times, I will repeat myself, Mr. Speaker, 3 times. Labour MPs voted against a reason amendment to the Children's Bill. At committee stage of that bill, they voted against. At committee stage of the Crime and Policing Bill, they voted against a national inquiry. And at Prime Minister's questions, the Prime Minister repeatedly ruled out a national inquiry to the chairs of all of these Labour MPs who are now pretending this is what they believed all along.
Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch launched a blistering attack on both the Home Secretary and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer on Monday, accusing them of deliberately downplaying and sidelining previous calls for a national inquiry into grooming gangs for fear of causing a stir. Speaking at a press conference inside Parliament, Badenoch did not mince words, calling out what she described as years of institutional cowardice that enabled child sexual exploitation to flourish in towns and cities across Britain. We've had report after report, testimony after testimony, and still, those in power have chosen silence over action, Badenoch said. The Home Secretary had the authority to act. Keir Starmer had the influence to demand answers. And yet both looked away. Why? Because they didn't want to cause a stir. Badenoch's remarks come amid a renewed political firestorm over the government's handling of grooming scandals, particularly those involving coordinated abuse by groups of men in towns such as Rotherham, Telford and Rochdale. The public outcry over past failings, where survivors were ignored, disbelieved or dismissed, has reignited calls for accountability at the highest levels. Her criticism of the Home Secretary, typically considered off-limits in a party leader's public statements, was especially striking. Though Badenoch didn't name them directly, it was clear her frustration is directed at what she sees as years of buck passing at the Home Office under both Conservative and Labour government. She reserved particular ire for Keir Starmer, whose time as Director of Public Prosecutions has come under renewed scrutiny. Starmer was at the Crown Prosecution Service during the height of these scandals. He had the tools to launch prosecutions to send a message. Instead, he chose discretion over courage, Badenoch said. Badenoch's intervention marks a pivotal moment in the public reckoning with grooming scandals, a subject that has long been politically toxic due to its complex intersections with race, religion, and immigration. While previous governments shied away from the topic to avoid inflaming community tensions, Badenoch and her supporters argue that avoidance has only deepened mistrust and pain. As political leaders from all parties prepare to testify or face scrutiny, Badenoch's hardline stance may set the tone for what's to come. A no-holds-barred inquiry where reputations will be on the line and evasion will no longer be tolerated.
Yes, so Baroness Casey's report, we understand, will call for local inquiries with statutory powers to then feed into a national body.
Statutory powers means that they can require witnesses.
They can compel witnesses and can compel evidence. This has been a major criticism that we've heard of local inquiries in previous years. The Rotherham, Rochdale, Oldham and Telford local reviews were all done basically by people coming forward of their own volition, choosing to contribute. But we understand that Baroness Casey's report, when it comes out later today, will call for local inquiries with statutory powers, which will then feed back into this national judge-led inquiry.
Harder to control the timing then?
Yes, it will be, and there are lots more details to be thrashed out by the Home Office on this.
50 towns. Is that 50 local inquiries?
Well, we don't know which areas have been suggested for this, but we do know some of the survivors who've been meeting with the Home Office officials and Jess Phillips, the Safeguarding Minister, in recent weeks and months on this. I'm hoping that Bradford's on that list because there's one survivor we know from that town who's been campaigning very aggressively for many years alongside the Tory MP Robbie Moore for a local investigation into Bradford, which has always resisted an inquiry.
Astonishing if it's not.
Robbie Moore has always demanded a Rotherham-style investigation into Bradford. He might now get something completely different, something far stronger. A local inquiry with statutory powers, people dragged in front of an investigation, feeding into a national level.
Baroness Louise Casey is set to deliver a landmark recommendation that could reshape Britain's response to one of the most painful and politically charged scandals of the past 2 decades. According to senior Whitehall sources, the long-awaited Casey report on grooming gangs will call for a series of local statutory inquiries, each with legal authority to compel evidence and testimony. The anticipated structure of the response mirrors the model used in the Grenfell Tower and Hillsborough inquiries, localized, rigorous, and accountable to the public. But unlike previous efforts, Baroness Casey's plan envisions a formal pipeline through which findings from cities like Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, and beyond would be aggregated into a single national investigation capable of holding multiple institutions to account. Earlier this week, Prime Minister backed a national inquiry, describing it as a moral necessity and promising that victims will finally be heard. That pledge has elevated expectations for Baroness Casey's blueprint, which is widely seen as the foundational roadmap for how that national investigation might unfold. Support for the approach is gaining momentum across the political spectrum. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has already endorsed Casey's reported recommendations, saying, "If we are serious about justice, we cannot rely on voluntary cooperation. We need statutory power, real accountability, and public transparency." Labour's Keir Starmer, under renewed scrutiny for his role as Director of Public Prosecutions during the peak years of many grooming gang abuses, cautiously welcomed the news, but warned against politicizing the process. Nevertheless, several Labour backbenchers have expressed support for the model, privately admitting that prior efforts to avoid inflaming tensions came at the expense of truth. Not everyone is enthusiastic. Some community leaders have warned that a new wave of localized inquiries could reopen old wounds or deepen ethnic tensions. A joint statement from several community cohesion groups in Bradford and Birmingham urged sensitivity and inclusion in how the inquiries are framed and communicated to the public.